Why learning English is much easier than learning French. Have you thought about learning French or take English classes? Do you find it difficult to decide which language to learn? In our previous article, we analyzed the differences between Chinese and English language. Today, we are going to talk about the differences between English and French language and see why learning English is much easier than learning French. Background information about the two languages. 2/3 of the world's population communicates in French or English, making them two of the most frequently spoken languages. However, English is the official language of the United States, Kenya, the United Kingdom, South Africa, Canada, Jamaica, Pakistan, Uganda, Australia, Barbados, New Zealand, Ireland, India, Guyana, Nigeria, and 46 other nations. French is the official language in Belgium, Gabon, Switzerland, Seychelles, Senegal, France, Congo, and Ivory Coast. Moreover, you should find native speakers of both languages in every nation on Earth. There is a large pool of potential students for both languages due to their widespread use. 1.35 billion out of a total population of approximately 7.8 billion worldwide are bilingual in one or both of these tongues. Given this, we can all agree that communicating effectively in English and French is crucial. Native speakers and others looking to learn both languages argue it is easier for newcomers. This article aims to analyze the more complex language between English and French to add to the existing literature on this topic and end the discussion once and for all. Most difficult language to learn between English and French. Learning either English or French takes time but is not very difficult, and both languages may be mastered to a high level in little more than 6 months. The spelling and pronunciation of French words are relatively easy compared to those of other languages. French terms are simpler to detect, French verbs are easy, and French grammar is simple. On the other hand, English is widely regarded as being simple to pick up because of the abundance of material dedicated to teaching it, the relative simplicity of its grammar rules, the fact that its sentences tend to be shorter and free of gender placement, complex adjectives, formal tenses, and word agreement, and so on. Because French is so close to English, it is sometimes even simpler for English speakers to pick up the language. About 45% of all English terms have a French root, and French is one of the simplest languages for a native English speaker. If you can speak English, you already know many French terms' spelling, pronunciation, and meaning. Even while English speakers may have a little luck when it comes to learning French, and the language may be seen as simple to pick up, learning French is often seen as challenging, particularly for non-English speakers, and is sometimes viewed as even more challenging than studying English. Reasons why French is harder than English. French is harder than English. Here are a few of the reasons why learning French may be more challenging than learning English. French has gendered words. The French language uses gendered words, making it much more challenging to pick up. To employ a gendered term in French here indicates that the language allows for a clear distinction between male and female language usage. French pronouns, adjectives, verb endings, and the definite/indefinite article used before a noun all change depending on the speaker's gender. For example, there are 3 separate articles in French that function as the equivalent of the definite word the in English. It includes the articles le, singular male nouns, la, singular feminine nouns, and les, plurals, for all plural nouns. The same goes for other French terms. Furthermore, French does not just stop at having gendered nouns, there are a few guidelines for knowing which gender to use that matches every noun, which makes it harder to learn than English. More complicated conjugations. A verb's conjugation is the sequence in which it takes on a new form to convey meaning about the tense, person, mood, gender, aspect, or number associated with the described action. I, you, he, she, we, you, and they are all examples of verbs conjugated in English. However, conjugating French verbs like manger, te manges, il mange, mange, nous mangeons, vous mangez, and so on may appear more challenging to master than their English counterparts. Difficulty in pronunciation. Third, the difficulty pronouncing French words gives the impression that the language is more challenging to master than English. French words are spoken with syllabic rhythm, the terms generally conclude with a vowel, the focus is on the final syllables, most French words begin with voiceless consonants, and most sounds are similar and often distinguished when speaking. It means the pronunciation is challenging and complex, particularly for a learner. Oral comprehension. French pronunciation difficulties add to the challenge of oral understanding. It's essential to remember that liaisons are one aspect of French pronunciation that makes verbal learning challenging. Pronouncing the last consonants of words and alternating between vowel and consonant sounds is liaisons, a defining aspect of French vocabulary. French uses formal words. French speakers utilize formal and informal language in their speeches, unlike English speakers, who tend to use more casual language while conversing with others. In French, you may say tu, you, while talking to a close friend, but vous, you, when talking to a more senior person like your employer. French is more challenging than English because of the language's emphasis on formality. Complex syntax. French language syntax is not simple. French verb agreement, which adds ends at the end of a term to make it plural, and the accord of French words contribute to the frequently convoluted syntax of French words. These factors combine to make French syntax seem more complicated and challenging than English. Complicated use of adjectives. Adjectives in French feature plural forms and gender differences, but in English, they do not. Furthermore, French adjectives vary depending on the noun they modify, making their usage look more intricate than it is. French seems more challenging to master than English because of its more sophisticated use of adjectives. Difficult spelling of words. French's many grammatical, syntactical, accord, and entirety restrictions give its spelling a distinction for being more complex than that of English. As a result, it's more challenging for people to study the French language. Higher societal expectations. Last but not least, the cultural influences help to explain why French is more challenging than English. You'd better be proficient in French if you seriously want as a French speaker in a typical French society. But you won't find this kind of expectation in traditional French culture. Since French has such stringent requirements for proficiency, it is more challenging to learn than English. Reasons why English is easier than French. Learning French versus learning English. People say that the English language is alive. The language is around for nearly 2 millennia and changed with each new generation of speakers. Today's kids speak English significantly different from ours. There are many English learners around the world. You may talk to people learning English or working in the field of language teaching around the clock. Friends who are also studying English as a second language from their home language or the language of their place of residence may be a great resource. Learn English when traveling. It's simple to study English while traveling. There is no longer a need to sit and memorize vocabulary lists in books or endure tedious English grammar exercises on mobile devices. You may learn English more efficiently and maintain your motivation through online classes. Unlike other languages, English has no concept of cases, no gender, no need for word agreement, and maybe a basic grammar system. The English language is often considered simpler than the French language due to its shorter length and fewer regulations. Compared to French, English grammar is simpler because of its gender-neutral nouns, singular adjectives, and few easy conjugations for verbs. Learning English is not a big deal. In truth, English contains a complete set of tenses, and its irregular verbs are not significantly different from those of your language or any other. Conclusion. It needs repeating that both French and English are beneficial languages to know and are relatively simple to pick up quickly. Despite this, learning French looks more challenging than learning English.